Good morning, everybody. We are live. Week 1 is here. Feels good to say it out loud. What is good, everybody? Welcome in. This is Fantasy Football Sunday, presented by Fantasy Sports Markets. My name is Ben Heisler. This is now year number 6 that I have been fortunate enough to be able to host this glorious Sunday morning show. And with me, my good friend for so many years. We go back to our days at SiriusXM together. I was on the MLB side, but this man was grinding on the SiriusXM fantasy sports beat for how many years now, Fensty? How long have you been doing fantasy sports, having this a part of your life?
It's been 83 years. No, Ben, it's been about 10 years that I've been in the fantasy sports sector. And why is that? Because it's fun. At the end of the day, we all want to win. We all want to dominate. But let's face it, fantasy football is the most fun activity a sports fan can have. And I'm a huge NBA guy. I love my NBA. But fantasy football is that one seed when it comes to fantasy sports.
I agree. I think this is the place to be. And again, we're already seeing an NBA level style of drama to kick things off. And we'll get to all those different stories coming up in just a second. But I will say this. We are here for you. This has been sort of our calling card, especially now that we're doing the live stream show. So anybody that has questions, we are here to help answer them for you. Send us your way, whether you're watching us on YouTube Live, whether you're watching us on Periscope. We can see the questions that you guys are sending in. If for whatever reason we don't respond or we don't see them right away, go ahead and send them again. We will make sure we continue to keep our eye on it. We already see something from Petey Dubs. He's checking back with us again. Petey, welcome back, buddy. It's good to have you as a part of the show. So again, we are here for you. We want to make sure that your lineups are good for week number 1. Week 1 too, Fensty, by the way. Think about it from the perspective of you as a Mets fan, me as a Cub fan.
Oof, let's not admit that.
But hold on for a second. Just in the idea of the games that you win in April are the games that you don't have to worry about when you're trying to chase down a division title, trying to get into the postseason a little bit later on. These week 1 games matter. And even if you get off to a slow start, you can recover. We're going to be able to help you recover along the way, but the reality is that you want to get off to a good start, and especially when there's so much unknown. We've been doing this all week. We've been studying a lot of this stuff, so let's try and help you guys out along the way, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. For all those season-long players out there, the roulette wheel is going to begin turning. It technically already has after that Thursday game, but still the roulette wheel is going to start to turn, and what that means is the injury bug. It's landing on someone over the next few weeks. I'm not jinxing anything. This is reality. This is football, a contact sport, and your cornerstone is essentially at risk right now. One injury, one bad tackle, and he's out. What are you going to do? That's what you're going to do. You're going to keep going. You're going to keep plowing through. You're going to be active on that waiver wire. Ben, people think fantasy football is some 3-day job. Just like a general manager. In reality, in sports, every single day, that's how you win those rings.
By the way, for whatever reason, and if anybody is following us on Twitter, you should be doing so at Fensty Sports and at Benny Heiss. The last time we did one of these live stream videos, Fensty, it was during college basketball season. So again, we're shaking off the rust a little bit, and for whatever reason, it's sort of mentioning that there's a college basketball live stream going on right now. No, there is no March Madness breakdown. This is a fantasy football show.
Oh, it is madness, Benny Heiss. It is madness.
It's
we don't know anything, Benny Heiss, because no one plays in preseason.
I agree. So we are live. We are talking football. There is no fantasy college basketball right now. We will have college fantasy football or college fantasy basketball on Fantasy Sports Markets coming up a little bit later on.
And my alma mater will not be involved, American University.
Oh, what a shame.
Oof.
What an absolute shame that might be. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We already have a question in from our guy, Petey Dubs. Our guy, Seth Atkins, is checking in on Periscope. So we're going to answer a quick question, and then we're going to start going over some of the news and notes of the day. There's a lot of injury news that we need to keep you posted on. There's some movement going around. We're going to talk about Antonio Brown and also start to dive into the games as well. But first, because our guy Petey checked in, he has a wide receiver 3 question. It's a full point PPR league, Fensty. Who are we going with today between Michael Gallup, who is at home today against the New York Giants, Mohamed Sanu, who is on the road at Minnesota, or Marquise Goodwin in a very enticing matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. So I will toss it to you. I have an idea of who I'd like to go with, but who would you like to go with in this matchup?
I really don't know how Sanu and Gallup will be used in terms of the target share, at least with Marquise Goodwin. I am not a huge believer in Dante Pettis just yet. I love Deebo Samuel, but they don't have too many other targets after Kittle. We'll have to see how Coleman's being used. Between the three, Benny Heist, I'm down to go with Mohamed Sanu. Even though I really like Goodwin in the matchup here, we've done this before. We've been down this road before with Mohamed Sanu. You know he'll get some targets. You'll know he'll get red zone targets as well. So as much as I want to go with Goodwin, with San Francisco, it's going to be a lot of watching and speculating this week, Ben, because I don't have a good read on this team. So I'm going Sanu. What about you?
I think if you're looking for the big play, Gallup makes a lot of sense. I don't like the Giants' corner situation one bit. You're also going to see maybe some limited snaps from Zeke Elliott, so we'll see how the passing game starts to get incorporated.
Let me jump in for a second.
Yeah.
With Zeke, actually, reports are coming out that he's actually, and this is according to Jason La Canfora here of CBS, saying that expected to get a, quote, significant workload. So when it comes to the 2025 snaps here, wondering how he's going to be utilized, Ben, and this is a guy with Zeke that I'm still, if I have him in my leagues, just to say I'm starting him in every single league.
No. Let me make one thing very clear. If you have Zeke in season long, you're starting him today. Tony Pollard might be involved. He might be an active participant when it comes to third down role in the passing game. And listen, if you watched any part of the preseason, you saw that Tony Pollard was electric in space and a guy that's a really good athlete and can catch passes out of the backfield. I don't think Tony Pollard is going away. Like, let's not make any mistake to think that, like, he's now relegated to, like, the third or the fourth string running back on this team. They're still going to use Tony Pollard in the passing game. Jerry Jones is very high on him. Jason Garrett is high on him as well. But I still am of the belief that, yes, Zeke's role will be fine, but I do think Prescott is going to be able to pass the ball a little bit as well. And here's the other thing, too, about Gallup. Gallup was missed by Prescott on so many open, deep throws a season ago that his target share was not particularly good, but his average depth of target, his ADOT, was fantastic. So they're looking to Michael Gallup down the field, and I think he's somebody that could pay dividends as sort of that guy with the higher upside. He's the highest upside play of those three guys, by all means, but I think if you're looking for something a little bit safer, Sanu is probably the guy. Right. I'm also, and you can tell me how you feel about this too, about Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin was that sexy name last year that a lot of people jumped on in their drafts in the 6th or the 7th or the 8th round. They felt that Garoppolo and Goodwin had a connection, and it's a very good matchup against Tampa Bay secondary. The problem that I see here is that it feels like the rise of Goodwin is more of an indication of other San Francisco wide receivers not being fully healthy. You saw some issues with Deebo Samuel, but he's expected to be good to go. They still have some other issues, but you're right, they're going to spread it around a little bit more. Sanu doesn't have a good matchup either.
I was just going to jump in very quickly on San Francisco. It's very interesting because as much as I want to view Tevin Coleman and separate him from the receivers, it's very hard to do. And I'm seeing Matt Breida, especially I saw at the tail end of draft season, Matt Breida creeping up ADP charts. Because do you think that at this point with Matt Breida, he's got a good amount of standalone value entering this game?
Yeah, I'm actually a big fan of both San Francisco running backs in this game. Like, they're going to be involved in the passing game. I know that Breida got that RB1 on the depth chart, but listen, they signed Tevin Coleman for a reason. He's a perfect fit in Kyle Shanahan's offense. We saw that over the last few years before when they were working together. So, I think Breida could get upwards of maybe 15, 16 carries. He'll probably get the goal line work. And Coleman could be targeted maybe 5-6 times in the passing game as well. I've seen a possible, DFS stack lineup where you go with Garoppolo and the two running backs. Like, that's conceivably possible.
And that's totally fine, Ben. I mean, we're talking about a game total that's at 51 right now.
And going up, by the way. It started at 49, it's gone up to 51.
I mean, you need exposure in this game. Ben, all week long, I've been really wanting a piece of that Jacksonville KC game. But don't forget about San Francisco Tampa. Even though there aren't a lot of sexy names, especially on the San Francisco side, again, this is a good week to look at both running backs and to just stack them just to see how it is. So while I was saying to you before, Ben, that I don't have a good read on this team, especially with all the injuries, that is a very intriguing strategy today to at least hedge and stack both Coleman and Breida in that same lineup. That's perfect.
I think so too. I see a question coming in from Fantasy Burner 12 on Periscope. We will get to your question in just a second. Thanks so much for checking in with us on Fantasy Football Sunday. Fantasy, I think this needs to be discussed because it's clearly been the biggest story, not just in fantasy football, but in the NFL. Trying to figure out what the hell happened with Antonio Brown, and now the release of him going away from Oakland. You saw the celebration video. He now has a 1-year, $15 million contract, $9 million guaranteed with the New England Patriots. It's remarkable to think about the turnaround for the Patriots offense when it comes to how we viewed them from this offseason, thinking that they were going to be a more run-oriented team. They drafted Damian Harris this offseason, and now Josh Gordon gets reinstated. Julian Edelman looks to be healthy. Philip Dorsett is right on the outside, but he's now probably going to get kicked to the curb because Antonio Brown is a New England Patriot. So Give me your perspective on what you're now expecting from the New England offense. Do you expect them to be a little bit more pass-heavy than we initially anticipated? And boy, like it certainly brings up Tom Brady's value as a guy that was maybe going drafted in the 14th or 15th round to a guy that you're probably going to want to start in on a fairly consistent basis now.
Ben, in our 14-team auction that you and I participate in, I got Brady for $4 for that reason.
And at the time, I thought he was too expensive.
Right. People knew I was in on him, so they bid him up, and I paid the extra $1, and that's why I was fine with it. Now with the Patriots, I mean, even with Demaryius Thomas still in there, I still had that confidence in Brady. Now, with arguably the best receiver in the game, sorry, Hopkins, but AB is also in that discussion as well. Of course they're going to be more passing. But now, Ben, here's my question. Where does James White fit in after week 1? So not talking about this week versus Pittsburgh. After week 1, where does James White fit? He's going to get squeezed, it seems like.
I don't know if he's going to get squeezed because I still think there's going to be drop-off opportunities. Think about what Brady does so effectively, right? He gets the ball out quick. Brady, you know, what's that line from Coming to America? You know, Joe Louis is 127 years old. Tom Brady is 127 years old. He's clearly working with a doctor who's not a doctor to keep him young and keep him active. And there's always going to be a role for James White on this team. I don't know whether it's going to be the extent of what we've seen from James White the last few years, but he's been all reliable. James White is that like perfect PPR back that you can safely plug in with that super high floor and say to yourself, okay, yeah, I might not have a high upside guy, but at least I can throw in James White in my PPR lineup, and he'll get me about 9, 10, 11 points. On a week-in, week-out basis, you usually almost felt great about that. Now it might go down a little bit. Maybe the targets go down a couple, but especially with Sony Michel and the injury issues that have plagued him in the past, I don't think Damian Harris is ready to take over more of a role at this point. I'm not ruling out James White yet. However, let's say he has a big game against Pittsburgh. Do you look at him as a trade candidate for your season-long league?
Yeah, I think you have to. And again, with James White, remember, James White is not really the handcuff to Sony Michel. You have to view James White, even though he's a running back, you have to view him more as a receiver. That's why he was being drafted so close to Sony Michel, and Damian Harris is that true handcuff. Now, Ben, something else I'm going to add a little bit of salt to this wound with the Patriots now and the target share. Do you think that Josh Gordon, at this point in his mind, reinstated, now Antonio Brown is coming in, he can't be more motivated to dominate week 1 than today. This is almost audition time for Josh Gordon. So on FSM, with no salary implications, Ben,
I love it.
Is this a guy that, due to the motivating factor, we should put in all of our lineups?
I don't know if I can go ahead and listen. Josh Gordon has burned me more than enough times in the past, and I still think
now he's auditioning. This is it. This is his face turn. What is he going to do once Antonio Brown's coming in? Somebody's targets is getting squeezed at this point, Ben. How can he be any more motivated than this week?
Yeah, but the problem is that we've talked about, and by the way, we'll answer this question in just a second. I mentioned Fantasy Burner 12. We will get to your question coming up in just a second. Also seeing questions in from Way Big on Periscope, from Jesse LB. Sizzle is back with us again this year. Got a good question actually about James White that we'll get to in just a second. And of course, Mr. Sports Take on Periscope is back. We will answer all of your guys' questions coming up in the next few minutes on Fantasy Football Sunday. Also a reminder, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a promo code FFSunday. That'll get you $5 full free over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. And if you go right to the top, you will notice that there is a $5 contest with $50,000 in perfect roster bonuses available for you guys as well. So that's It's free entry, folks. There's plenty of different $5 contests as well. Fensty, I saw you enter in that single entry $5 contest as well. I mean,
I got
right
one
here.
question, Ben. Where's everybody else? Where are the challengers here? Let's go. Who wants to face off against the champs? Let's go. I see that there are more slots open, and I want people entering that contest. I want some healthy competition from the FSM audience.
I want the healthy competition for you as well, and there are plenty of spots that still have overlay in them. So you might get some healthy competition, Fensty, but there still might be a bunch of overlay on fantasysportsmarkets.com today as well. So if you're playing fantasy football, if you're looking for a spot that's not going to be overrun by people with algorithms, and again, those algorithms are fine. We prefer people to have a good time on our site. So it's over at fantasysportsmarkets.com where you can dive right in. As far as Josh Gordon goes, he is not my favorite wide receiver in that particular matchup. I do have some exposure to Juju Smith-Schuster in this game. I actually think Pittsburgh can win. I think Pittsburgh can go on the road and beat New England today, and I think Smith-Schuster is going to get upwards of maybe 13 to 14 targets in this game because they're going to have to pass against New England to win. So that's probably my favorite wide receiver in the Sunday night game. But yeah, if you want to throw Josh Gordon into a Fantasy Sports Markets lineup today, when everyone else is going to be playing the top guys, absolutely. The ownership levels for Gordon are going to be less than 10%, and I think that's a really sharp play by you.
No, absolutely. And again, this is why this isn't any kind of you mentioned algorithms before. This is an algorithm. This is me thinking like a casual sports fan thinking, because we've seen this before with motivations and whatever, people with DFS, especially Ben, there's the birthday narrative and everything. There's the revenge narrative. So this is one of those situations where Gordon is looking to keep his spot. Just reinstated, so the trust factor is like this. Ben, he burned you last year, but guess what, Ben? Last year's over. This is DFS. At this point, let's try week one to put those revenge factors aside and vengeances aside, because with Josh Gordon this week, again, somebody's targets are getting squeezed when AB comes in.
All right, Fancy, you want to answer some of the people's questions for today?
Always.
All right, so we talked about James White. Sizzle on Periscope brings up Josh Jacobs or James White in a half-point PPR. You have White, of course, Sunday night at home against Pittsburgh. Josh Jacobs in the Monday night game at home against the Denver Broncos in a tough defense. I think when it comes to projecting volume, and you want somebody that's going to get a lot of volume, the Raiders have made no secret, Fensty, that Josh Jacobs is going to be the guy, especially now with no Antonio Brown. We're not sure where those targets are going to go to. Some people are expecting it to be Tyrell Williams. Maybe you might see a little bit more Hunter Renfrow. Darren Waller, sort of that popular name from Hard Knocks this season, is a guy that I probably am expecting to get more of the work share targets in the middle of the field. But half-point PPR between Josh Jacobs and James White, who are you more likely to side with?
I'm just going to go with James White for this one. Again, looking to shut down Josh Jacobs, and who do you have after that? I mean, you just mentioned Tyrell Williams, Renfrow, Waller. I mean, make them throw against you. And again, with this Patriots-Pittsburgh game here, it's a 49 game total. I need exposure in that, expecting a lot of passing. I almost want to take the over on this game, Benny Ice.
I think that's a great play.
And I haven't seen too much of Josh Jacobs at the pro level. Not every single running back translates as well. I mean, last year I even remember you guys were drafting Ronald Jones, Royce Freeman in the 4th round, and we didn't really have much proof back then. So for this week, Ben, and again, next week I may have a different answer. For this week, I feel like the safer play is James White because of that high Vegas total, 49. James White, again, Brady with the quick dump-offs, they're going to White.
Yeah, I was excited about Jacobs initially, only because I thought the volume would be just on an astronomical level. I thought he was going to get upwards of 20 to 25 touches, but they could be playing from behind. I think Denver's offense is actually going to be not awful this year. I think Flacco can stabilize the quarterback spot. Certainly not an elite level quarterback. Let's not make any mistake about it. But I do think there's going to be some stability at the quarterback spot, especially with Manny Sanders back as well. So we're going to go with James White, probably the safer play. Jacobs could end up being awesome. But if you're Denver, you're selling out to stop the run because Derek Carr and Tyrell Williams are going to beat you down the field. No, not with Denver's corner. So we're going to go with James White in this matchup. All right, Fantasy Burner, you are up next on Fantasy Football Sunday. He is in a non-PPR league. Does he go with Miles Sanders, Justin Jackson, or Latavius Murray? and that would be for a flex spot. So really quickly, Miles Sanders in a terrific matchup today at home against Washington. Justin Jackson is also in a decent matchup. He is at home for the Chargers against the Indianapolis Colts. And then there's Latavius Murray in that Monday night. It's the early Monday night game for the New Orleans Saints. Latavius Murray no longer with the Minnesota Vikings. He is likely taking on that Mark Ingram role in New Orleans. And so to be perfectly honest, Fensty, in a non-PPR, I'm of the belief that Murray is going to get a bunch of touches, and they're going to use Kamara the same way that they've used him over the last few years.
Right.
I think I would rather play Latavius Murray in a non-PPR format because I expect him to get the most amount of touches, especially by the goal line. What about you?
In non-PPR, I mean, as appealing as Sanders is, and I should bring in some news at this point, Rap Sheet reporting that the Eagles, and this has been an all-week report, this is nothing new, that multiple running backs will be used with, it doesn't matter who the starter is, both Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard will get their love in the offense. Latavius Murray has a good amount of standalone value, and in non-PPR leagues especially, that's where you want Latavius Murray and you prioritize him. And again, the total just so high for this game, and because of that, again, I'm with you with Murray. Again, it's just like we just talked about with Josh Jacobs, waiting to see what Sanders is going to bring and how he's going to fit. I'm fine with going after Murray.
I think so, too. I think that's the play. Also, something to keep in mind, we were talking about high totals. Chiefs and Jags have gone down from 52.5 down to 50. So something that you want to keep an eye on as far as movement when it comes to the line. Jets and Bills have moved up 2 points. Ravens and Dolphins have moved up 3 points. And that's intriguing, too, because I think the Baltimore Ravens defense was one of those defenses that I think almost as everybody is locking in. It's a combination of them, the Seahawks, and the Eagles defense is probably our three favorite DFS defenses for today, would you say?
Yes, sir. I've got Seahawks everywhere today.
Okay, let's continue on with your guys' questions. We are live on YouTube Live. We are live on Periscope, on Twitter as well. You can find us there. And hit us up if you're not able to enter your questions here at Fensty Sports and at Benny Heiss. We are going to be with you guys each and every Sunday morning from 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Central. That's 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. East Coast time. To Way Big on Periscope. He's got a wide receiver question. And again, the more specific you guys can make it, the easier it is for us to answer this question. So Way Big says, do I go with Diggs, Marvin Jones, or Dede Westbrook? And again, we're not sure whether it's a standard league or a PPR league.
Right.
Let's start with Stephon Diggs. Do you have any concern about his health entering today?
Reports saying he's going to play despite him being a little sore. So we have to expect that he's going to be in full usage today.
Okay. So with that being said, the other two guys, I'm about as high on as you can possibly be.
Right.
Dede Westbrook is in a terrific matchup where there is a ton of expected volume. He's probably your favorite sleeper today. Meanwhile, Marvin Jones is probably a guy that, if I was playing on an FSM in one of the bigger contests, I'd probably want to throw him in one lineup because going up against Arizona secondary, that atrocious secondary in Arizona on the fast track, Marvin Jones has actually put up better numbers and has scored 6 more touchdowns than Kenny Golladay since 2017. He's a guy that can burn you deep, and I think Stafford is going to throw the ball and find Jones for a couple of deep touchdowns today. Kerryon Johnson's still going to be involved, but I do think that Marvin Jones is going to get himself into the end zone. So where do you go in this matchup? Do you just go with Diggs because he's the better, more consistent player?
No, I'm going to go with Dede, actually.
Okay.
Again, it wasn't expected, did not target this guy in a single season-long league. But in DFS today, again, I need a piece of that Jags offense.
Okay, I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Dede Westbrook as well. I think that's probably the safest play with still a bunch of upside. If you really want to take that dart throw, I would go with Marvin Jones because I think the matchup is just so juicy for him.
And there's not much competition. I mean, Hockenson, we have not heard anything about Hockenson.
Yeah, but do you typically trust rookie tight ends anyway?
No, unless I see reports that they've been impressive, which I haven't seen.
Correct.
It's like you saw Ben with Mark Andrews. He was getting raving reports, and I take everything a beat writer or reporter. I've been in this industry as long as you have, Ben. I take everything with a grain of salt. I absolutely do. But when you're consistently seeing reports and why and how they look on the field, That's how Mark Andrews' stock was able to rise.
Absolutely.
With Hockenson, I heard nothing about this guy.
Right, and maybe that's how the Lions are trying to keep it. Maybe they're not showing him off over the course of the preseason. Listen, he was a top 10 selection this year, and I think he has a chance to be a very good player.
Not a lot of competition there, and that's why, Ben, I love the Marvin Jones call, because there's just not a lot of competition after Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, and again, they're going to be a more run-heavy team, Detroit is, and because Arizona plays with such a fast pace,
right.
And we have no idea whether or not their offense is going to be incredible or whether it's going to be a complete and unmitigated disaster. So I look at Kerryon as a strong play for today. I think he'll be very popular on the salary sites. You might be able to get him for less ownership on fantasysportsmarkets.com today, but I just don't think enough people are going to be on Stafford and his wide receivers purely because they're just seeing Kerryon and their eyes are turning to the green dollar sign.
You know, it's interesting, Ben, because I take every report that I've seen throughout the summer and I try to make something of it. And I saw reports earlier this summer that, the Lions want to manage Kerryon Johnson's workload. And that made absolutely no sense to me. This is going to be a very telling week with how this guy's going to be utilized. Manage his workload, let him go.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly showed that when they managed his workload a season ago that it didn't work out for them. So I'm all about free Kerryon, let him be free. C.J. Anderson, I know that he looked good for the Rams a season ago, but again, this is the talented back. This should be the goal line back, the guy that's going to catch passes as well. More questions are coming in, both on Periscope and on YouTube. I see them from Danny. I see them from Chris. Seth weighs in with another question. I talked about Mr. Sports Take. He's coming up next. And then, of course, from Way Big and Fantasy Burner as well.
I got a question.
Yes.
Fantasy Sports question for Benny Heiss here. LaShawn McCoy, now you're in Kansas City.
I am.
Now, seeing reports out there, again, from Route Sheet, so take it as you will. Expected to see, quote, 15 to 20 snaps this week. So, Ben, I have to ask you this here, man. What's the pulse in Kansas City regarding Damian Williams at this point? Because with LaShawn McCoy being in there, that is going to be a major threat to his workload. But is there enough room for both of these guys to be productive? We know what Andy Reid is with his love for his run game. So what do you think of LaShawn McCoy's impact in KC?
He's going to have an impact. They've paid him too much money for him not to play a substantial role. I still think for week one, and you talked about the workload expected for LaShawn McCoy, it's still going to be more so for Damian Williams. And I actually think it makes more sense because you want running backs that can catch passes against Jacksonville. They're so good at getting to the quarterback, and they just have such a terrific corner in Jalen Ramsey, who's going to be shadowing Tyreek Hill today. And again, if Tyreek is running go routes down the field, that's going to open up a bunch of passing lanes. You saw a beautiful wheel route week 3 of the preseason for Damian Williams that went off for a 66-yard touchdown. I am a Damian Williams fan. I think Damian Williams can be very good. He caught 96% of his targets a season ago. McCoy only caught about 75, 76%. And again, maybe it's Josh Allen throwing him the ball as opposed to Pat Mahomes. But my take on the whole Kansas City backfield is that the Chiefs running backs, purely based on their efficiency, and they set an NFL record a season ago when it comes to their efficiency numbers and averaging 9.5 yards per target. I am either going all in my season-long league on both those guys. If I have Damian Williams, I'm trying to do whatever I can right now to trade for LaShawn McCoy while his value is unknown. Consequently, if I have LaShawn McCoy, I am trying to trade for Damian Williams while I think his value is probably at the lowest that it's been in several weeks. I want both of them on my team because nobody knows what the situation is going to be right now other than the fact that it's a full-on committee. If you don't want to deal with the committee on your fantasy team, cut bait, move on, because this is going to be a headache all year. But if you have both those guys, you're going to get exposure. You're going to get points on a week-in, week-out basis because Kansas City Chiefs running backs under Andy Reid Fensty do exceptionally well. They have over the last several years.
Yes, Ben, and that makes me wonder if today with Damian Williams at FSM contest, I think he's perfect for today. I really just do. I think a lot of people, Ben, you're going to see in week 1, and I noticed this a lot from the pulse of the people, they still have this season-long mindset. Ew, Damian Williams, LaShawn McCoy's there. I'm not touching him now. Okay, week 1, in a great matchup with a high total, perfect. I'll take him for FSM.
I think that's a really strong play with very low ownership for Damian Williams today. It's not an easy matchup. And again, there's so many running backs with very good matchups today. But again, if you're looking to find that edge, if you're looking to try and win that perfect roster bonus, turn the $5 into $50K, enter all the other contests for a shot at over $220,000. I think that's a really intriguing way to go. By the way, AJ checks in on Periscope. Says Benny is the leader of the Damian Williams hype train, and he's got me on board. I still think he is an RB1 if healthy. I'm with you, and there's still a lot that Damian Williams needs to prove because clearly they brought in LaShawn McCoy for a reason.
Right.
But I believe in his skill set in this offense, as you showed from week 12 to week 20 a season ago. This is from Jesse LB on YouTube. Jesse, appreciate you checking in with us. Welcome to the show this year, man. He's curious to get our thoughts on Tyrell Williams. We talked about Oakland's current situation with no more Antonio Brown. We talked about where the distribution of targets are likely to go to. Do you think Tyrell Williams now is that number one wide receiver? Is he going to be the guy that's going to get the bulk of the targets, Fensty?
Yes, but he's also going to get the bulk of the coverage, Benny Heiss, and that's the problem. Is he ready to take on number one coverage from the opposing side? That's the big question. But, Ben, maybe he is. Maybe he is ready to take it on. But the bottom line is they're going to need to throw the ball to someone. And as much as I'm looking at Renfrow, Waller I love, especially
that's my dude.
Antonio Brown. Because, I mean, look at last year. Jared Cook targeted so much in that red zone. And everyone, I love it, Ben. Everyone thinks that magically, ooh, Jared Cook, red zone threat. It's the system. And with that, Oakland threw a ton to their tight end in the red zone. How can you not love Darren Waller today? You know, you could, of course, go with on FSM, the big three with Kelsey, Ertz, and Kittle. You could do that. But today, we're talking Tyrell Williams. I get that. I feel good about him, Ben, because of target volume. But Darren Waller, again, red zone targets, it all matches up.
I like Darren Waller quite a bit because I think the middle of the field is an area that Antonio Brown was so good in. He was good on the outside. He was good in the middle of the field. He was good on those crossing patterns. Waller just allows a little bit more freedom. He's a big physical tight end with really good speed. So, yeah, I don't think that Derek Carr is going to be afraid to target him in the passing game. I also do think you're going to see more Hunter Renfrow. I think they like him. He's, that shifty, smaller wide receiver that's going to catch everything that comes his way.
They have no options. They're stuck at this point. I don't know who they're going to plan on bringing in next week, but they're stuck. They have no other options. I think all three of these guys are in play.
That's fair. And listen, they're going to be playing from behind throughout the course of the season.
Right.
So I certainly think that's a fair play. So, yeah, Tyrell Williams, we like him. And, again, think about the route tree that he would run last year. Like, Tyrell Williams was the go route receiver for Phillip Rivers. Tyrell the Gazelle would be able to catch that deep touchdown pass. I still think that's going to be his role. He's going to kind of be that guy that helps expand and move the defenses back a little bit. I just don't see that target share going up just because he's the number one guy. I think they like him because he opens up other pass opportunities for a lot of other receivers. That's just my personal opinion on Tyrell Williams.
And he's used to a full target load as well. Let's just not forget, I know the last two seasons he's had under 70 targets, but then you look back to 2016 and you had 119. So he can handle that workload. 7 touchdowns back in 2016 on 119 targets with 69 receptions. Just putting it out there that he's used to a full workload.
Our guy, Mr. Sports Take, is also on board with that. He says, I think Hunter Renfrow gets more of a bump with AB gone than with Williams. He also has a question for us today on Fantasy Football Sunday. Is it a risk playing Diggs, or should I go with somebody like Kenyon Drake in PPR? Oh, Kenyon Drake, Fensty. This is a guy that we were so high on just last year because of the ability that he has. He's so good at breaking tackles. He has electric speed. And for whatever reason, his coaching staff in Miami does not appear to constantly be on board with him.
They hate the Drake.
Hate the Drake. We love the Drake. We want to see the Drake go elsewhere so he can also be loved. But in a PPR league, on a bad Miami team, even with Diggs' concerns about his health, still going up against Atlanta in a home matchup, I feel like you got to go Diggs here.
You do. Before, I know all of a sudden when Brian Flores came out earlier in the week and said we'll get a good amount of touches, they're a situation where they have nobody else, so they're forced. It doesn't mean they'll succeed, but at the same time, something that I think people forget, Ben, and you can't with Diggs and Thielen, both of these guys will get fed a ton. And again, a good matchup there against Atlanta. I'm also going Diggs as well. Hate the Drake for now, Ben.
Yeah, it's a shame. By the way, another question from PD Dubs who's checking in. Any concern that Mike Evans may not be able to give it a go? What have you seen as far as the injury status for Mike Evans?
I've seen that. The thing with Mike Evans, he's sick. So take that. Hydration is huge in this point. And this is where reality meets fantasy when it comes to football. Exactly, Ben. I got my.
I had a wedding last night, man. I'm getting that green juice in.
Look at you, Ben. I love that. Spinach smoothies for everybody. But when it comes to Mike Evans at this point, all the reports are saying he'll play. He won't be limited. He's good to go.
Let's just a question from Chris on YouTube checking in for the first time. Thank you, Chris. Welcome into Fantasy Football Sunday. Again, quick reminder, we will be here each and every week from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. East Coast time. That is 9:30 to 10:30 Central time. Answering your lineup questions, going through the slate, breaking down our favorite matchups. And again, towards the end of the show, right at around that 10:25 mark Central time, Fensty and I are going to give you our fantasy sports markets cash lineups for today. We're going to go up head-to-head against each other each and every week. Bragging rights are on the line, but we believe in transparency. I know that on your Saturday morning show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, you talk about the plays that you discuss on the show are the plays that you're playing on sites like FSM and wherever else you might be playing. So we believe in the idea of transparency, being straight up with you guys. So we are going to give you our cash lineup, and you can do with it what you want. If you want to use it as a backing point, if you want to completely fade it altogether because you think we're a bunch of donkeys, that's totally fine too. But we want to be able to share that and go back and forth in the interest of full-on transparency.
And I want to add something on very quickly about that.
Yeah, and we will get to your question coming up next, Chris.
You see a lot of fantasy analysts who won't give you their picks and whatnot. Ben and I, we're students of the game. We're you guys. We're casual fantasy players. We don't have a zillion dollars in the bank to do so. When you win,
not yet.
Well, not yet. At least. When you win, we win. That's at least how my mentality has been. I have nothing to hide when it comes to plays. I absolutely want to win all contests I participate in. But I want you guys to win as well. So let's all win together.
By the way, somebody is mentioning that somebody wants to get me a Tito's vodka deal. That would be amazing. On the live stream, I would absolutely take that deal. That was what I was drinking last night at the wedding I was at. Little Tito's, little club soda on the rocks.
Ben, you drink too much of that, and like your shirt indicates, you'll be living in a van down by the river.
Down by the river. Oh, and you might be running around. This is from Chris on YouTube Live. Quarterback toss-up, and it is a good one, Fensty. Baker Mayfield or Jameis Winston today? I know who I'm going with because I think that the matchup sets himself up for a terrific day in a new system, new regime. I'm going Jameis Winston because I feel like going up against San Francisco, and that defense is atrocious. There's really nobody other than Seattle that plans to play defense in the NFC West this year. So I think Jameis, I'm buying into the Bruce Arians hype, Fensty. I think he's there to go downfield. I think he's there to get a bunch of touchdowns and yardage, and I think the turnovers are going to go down. Jameis Winston, I think it's a fairly conceivable possibility that he leads the NFL in passing yards in 2019, and he's got some great guys to throw to in Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and O.J. Howard. So I'm on Team Jameis Winston for this week. I just worry about Baker going up against Tennessee, who plays so slow. Where are you on this matchup?
I am with Jameis as well, as nauseous, Ben, as you can see by my face, as nauseous as it makes me feel. But again, this isn't last year. You just need this guy to throw. And like you said, Ben, passing yards, he might lead the league. Might also lead the league in interceptions as well. But with this matchup being as good as it is, Ben, I can't avoid Jameis today. I will have him in a few lineups. And again, it makes me nauseous. You see my face, but still, I can't trust Baker in this matchup, like for all the reasons you said. And I'm kind of in wait-and-see mode when it comes to Baker. I'd rather be starting a receiver like a Jarvis Landry or Higgins, who you mentioned before, Ben. But in this situation, we're going Jameis.
Danny checks in on YouTube Live. Danny, welcome to the show. Good to have you as a part of our broadcast today. Another toss-up in a half-point PPR between Josh Jacobs and Chris Godwin. I don't think we have to spend a whole lot of time on this. We just talked about our love for Jameis today. Oh, I am all over Chris Godwin today, and I know that he's a popular guy. Normally, you kind of have to fade that noise, but give me Chris Godwin today, especially in a half-point PPR setting.
Just for this week, I'm in wait-and-see mode, especially in light of the Antonio Brown situation. I'm in wait-and-see mode when it comes to how Jacobs will be utilized and the success that we can expect. I need to see it to believe it first.
From Periscope, we go to VS Squad 42, or it also might just be V Squad 42. It's like the whole PetSmart thing. Like, is it Pet Smart or PetSmart? I don't really know. It could be VS Squad or V Squad. I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's V Squad 42. PPR toss-up this week, Calvin Ridley on the road at Minneapolis against Minnesota and against the Vikings, or Marvin Jones, our guy, also on the road at Arizona. Let's talk about Calvin Ridley for a second, Fensty, because I think he's somebody that you can be very high on this year.
Even he's in my FSM lineups, Benny Heiss.
Ooh, okay. Even in this is a tough matchup today.
I think when it comes to the Falcons at this point, Julio still back 100% healthy at this point, going to get a lot of coverage. I was a little bit worried that he wasn't going to play after seeing reports. So what do I do here? I am starting a lineup. Just test this out, test the waters with Atlanta. Matt Ryan and Calvin Ridley handcuffed in that situation on FSM.
There's going to be very little ownership on both those guys, so I love it.
We saw what Calvin Ridley could do last year. I expect him this game. Everyone's thinking Julio. I'm expecting Ridley to be prioritized in this. So I actually am trying out the Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley, and daily this week just to be a little bit different.
Yeah, it's contrarian for sure. I worry about Minnesota's secondary in that matchup. And to me, I don't know if I necessarily have the fortitude, Fancy, to be able to go ahead and go down that route. But listen, Matt Ryan was the number 2 fantasy quarterback that nobody talked about because of how good Pat Mahomes was a season ago. Number 2 on that list, and Mahomes beat him by an average of 4 fantasy points per game, which is just insane because there was only about a 4-point difference between Matt Ryan and the number 11 quarterback in fantasy football. That's how good, that's how historic Mahomes was. But Matt Ryan had a fantastic fantasy season. So he's going to throw the ball. There's a crazy stat that I think he's only playing 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 outdoor games all season, and we know what the numbers are for Matt Ryan in domes versus out of domes. I know Scott Barrett of Pro Football Focus has a really good stat that I'll try and find for you guys coming up in just a second when it comes to Matt Ryan in domes. But listen, he can throw the ball, and they have Devontae Freeman back, who's one of the best pass-catching wide receivers in the league. Maybe that's another intriguing guy for Atlanta this week.
You're making me want to change this FSM lineup and actually switch from Ridley to Freeman just to be a little bit safer here.
So right now is Ridley in the flex spot for you?
You got me on tilt a little bit because I'm realizing that, you know what, because it's FSM, because of no salary, why not in my flex? Because I already have, and I'll even give this away. In one of my lineups, I've got Chris Carson, Dalvin Cook. I still have that flex spot open. Maybe I pivot to Freeman instead. Calvin Ridley.
I think I like that move a little bit more, but don't let me completely talk you out of Calvin
Ridley.
You
already did, Ben.
Especially because of how little the ownership will be. All right, here's the stat from Scott Barrett of Pro Football Focus when it comes to Matt Ryan in domes. It says throughout his career, 26 of Ryan's 37 highest scoring fantasy games, so 70% of them, have come in a dome. Last year, he averaged 23.8 fantasy points per game in a dome, but only 20.1 fantasy points per game when playing outdoors. And he only plays outdoors in 3 of 16 games this season. By the way, you mentioned Calvin Ridley. Another stat from Scott Barrett of Pro Football Focus. Calvin Ridley averaged 5.8 targets per game last year and ranked 5th of 82 wide receivers in fantasy points per target. Over the past 7 years, Dirk Cutter's wide receiver 2 has averaged 7 targets per game. So that would be an increase in targets from 5.8 to 7. You know what, Fensty? I would just do a full-on Voltron stack. Get a Matt Ryan, get a Devontae Freeman, get a Calvin Ridley, maybe run it back with Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen. Just go nuts in that game. Have a full exposure to that one.
I mean, it's, and again, on FSM, you can absolutely do that. But,
yes,
Ben, I'm starting to think that every week you and I should, just like building a house, build a lineup together where some of your guys that you love, some of my guys, some guys that we, by talking to each other, kind of figure things out a bit. Because when I'm writing down my running backs who I'm looking to target for DFS, Devonta Freeman, he was not really there for me when it came to some of the other running backs that I really wanted. I mentioned Carson, I mentioned Dalvin Cook. But, Ben, you bring up a good point here, and I just made that change in the lineup. Full transparency, I did it.
All right. Now I'm going to feel like total dog shit if they go and they just bomb for you.
It's your fault, Ben. No, it's not. It's my lineup. I'm building it. And if it messes up, that's on me. I'm the coach. I'm the GM. I'm the captain that goes down with the ship if it fails.
Seeing questions coming in from Guernica P on Periscope, from Kenny. over on YouTube Live. I see some from Lookout Lafferty as well. We mentioned we got the one in from V Squad 42. Let's go to Kenny's question, Fensty, on YouTube Live. Another quarterback toss-up. We just talked about how much we love Jameis Winston, but there's another quarterback that he's debating in between that I also am a big fan of, not just for this game, but for this season as well. Who are we going with at the quarterback spot between Jameis Winston and Cam Newton at home against the Los Angeles Rams?
Good totals there. I'm still going with Jameis, though, Ben. I am. Again, I want to see Cam not get hurt before I start using him particularly. Not saying I'm off his receivers completely, but still, I'm going Jameis just to be a little bit safer.
I think Jameis is probably the play for me, but I love Cam today, man. And Carolina's offense is, I think, can be special. I think there's so many weapons on this team. Certainly with McCaffrey, who was my number one overall guy this year. I don't know whether your guy was McCaffrey or Saquon or Zeke.
He was my number 3.
He was your number 3. So who are your 1 and 2s?
It was Zeke and Saquon. I didn't include the suspension there.
Okay, fair enough.
Saquon.
Okay, and then some people even had Kamara as their number 1 option too. And by the way, in Kansas City, but I would highly encourage anybody here that's watching this show to meet people and make friends and join fantasy leagues with people that live in Kansas City, because I was in a league. I was drafting 4th, number 1 overall pick, Superflex League. Pat Mahomes. I got Christian McCaffrey at number 4 overall, and I was doing laps around my backyard.
Wow. Yes. So to all of you out there, secure your running back.
Absolutely. Even in a super flex league,
yes,
first couple rounds.
If in that case, I get that strategy, but you need to secure your running backs. Even in a super flex, Ben, 2 of my first 3 picks would have been running backs.
By the way, did I say super flex? I don't know if you knew this, Fensty, but you know where you can play super flex daily fantasy, and no other site offers that?
Oh, what is that, Ben?
I believe it is fantasysportsmarkets.com.
Wow.
Oh, you know what else I see? There's a promo code at the bottom of this screen that will give you $5 for the cost of On the House, and you can enter that in any of our Superflex contests at fantasysportsmarkets.com. So you can basically play Week 1 for free and get a chance to see what Superflex DFS is all about. For those that don't know, yes.
Drinks are on the house.
The house. And for anybody unfamiliar with Superflex, basically, it's play whoever you want. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. There are 2 super flex spots for you to be able to incorporate into your lineup. You want to play 3 quarterbacks today? You can do that. It's all available at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Don't forget that promo code FFSunday for you guys to be able to get in. So again, Kenny, we are going with Jameis Winston over Cam Newton. It is a tougher decision between Winston and Newton, but we will side with Winston here. Yes.
Can I talk about some news here?
Please.
Some news intrigues me. I feel like all summer long we were trying to figure out how Adrian Peterson will be utilized in the Redskins offense. They have him, they're paying him, but then all of a sudden it's Geis is returning, so you're expecting him to get a little bit more support. Then the Redskins come out and say the running backs will be in use. Adrian Peterson, a healthy and active. What?
That's different, man. We haven't seen that before, especially with the productivity that he put up last year. Maybe this is a situation where Jay Gruden was actually telling the truth.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, Ben.
Wait, let me ask you this question, okay? If we're talking about sleepers for today, no Adrian Peterson, Darius Geis getting a bunch of run, Washington's going to be playing from behind. What do you think of Chris Thompson today?
I don't mind it. I do not mind it, especially with no Adrian Peterson there. I was really off of Thompson except in deep leagues, Ben. But now, at this point here, with Geis, we'll have to see with his usage. And again, Geis doesn't have that much experience. He tore his knee back in August. So he doesn't have that much. So he'll need a little bit more support from an experienced back. That's where Chris Thompson fits in. Also now as well, looking for them to pass a little bit more. Trey Quinn, Ben.
Yeah.
Trey Quinn. A few more on cash sites, but still where their salaries, but still Trey Quinn, Ben. I'm looking at him today.
I think that's a perfectly reasonable way to go, and whether or not you might have some interest in McLaurin as well, that's an interesting play. From Lookout Lafferty on YouTube Live, thank you for checking in with us today. PPR, and I'm trying to figure out which more he's talking about, because it's Tyler Lockett. It goes with Lockett or Moore. Any idea which more you think you might be referring to, Fensty?
Maybe my buddy Sandro Anello's best friend, Chris Moore. from the Ravens.
I can't imagine it. DJ Moore.
Probably DJ Moore. He's
DJ
probably
Moore.
Yeah. I just wanted to say Chris Moore anyway.
I'm glad you did.
Open in Baltimore.
There's going to be targets to go around if they decide to ever pass the ball. But this is an intriguing matchup. Moore, I actually like a little bit more than Samuel today. And I love Curtis Samuel this season, but he's going to draw a tough matchup against Aqib Talib. More likely to get a little bit more run coming out of the slot. And as for Tyler Lockett, he's now the number one guy in Seattle for Russell Wilson, but everybody is expecting today to be a Chris Carson heavy game because Cincinnati can't stop the run. Seattle is 10-point favorites at home. Pete Carroll is just flat out dominant in the month of September as the coach of the Seattle Seahawks. So where are you going in this one?
Man, I'm still going with Tyler Lockett. Man, I want to give Tyler Lockett a shot this week. I really do with all the targets. I know that they're going to run a lot. I know even Russell Wilson is going to run a lot. I'm willing to take a shot on Tyler Lockett, though, this week, Ben, and I'll pay for it if he ends up failing.
All right, perfectly reasonable. From Kenny on YouTube, it's a wide receiver toss-up from your New York Football Jets. Robbie Anderson or Jamison Crowder today? They are at home against the Buffalo Bills in a tough defense that they have to face.
That's tough, Ben. You know what? At this point, I wish I knew if it was like a DFS decision, season-long decision.
Yeah, I agree.
In season-long, I feel like I'm forced to go Robbie Anderson. He's healthy. He's expected to play. Maybe he's not 100%, but all the reports are saying he's good to go. But Jamison Crowder, talk about someone whose draft stock, like in terms of rising draft stock, one of the biggest differences between the beginning and the end of August. So possession receiver, you may want to go Crowder here, Ben. Robbie Anderson's still going to draw the tough coverage.
Yeah, with Tre'Davious White.
If you're talking about it in DFS, and again, I don't know season-long, DFS 100% Crowder. Season-long, Anderson's more consideration, but again, with a tough matchup, go Crowder still.
Fair enough. So again, we have about 9 minutes to answer your remaining questions. In about 5 minutes or so, we are going to go over our favorite plays and our lineups over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Fency and I, like we said before, we will be going head-to-head against each other each and every week in the interest of full transparency over on Fantasy Sports Markets. So that is the way that we're going it out. We'll do our lineup, not for Superflex Fency, but we'll do just our traditional lineup as well, and we'll put that out there. We'll even tweet it out if we need to. And again, that's probably going to be my lineup too over in the Beat Benny Heist contest, and you can enter that for just $1, as well as the $5 for free over at fantasysportsmarkets.com in the line below. Fancy, we've gone over a number of games today. We've obviously gone over some of the breaking news as well. Is there a game or a matchup that we haven't had a chance to dive into? We mentioned, actually, let me ask you this. We mentioned D.D. Westbrook as a guy that we both like today. I don't know where you stand on Leonard Fournette. But
I knew it. I was literally looking at my Beat Benny Heist contest, and I set this lineup a few days ago, Ben. I have not really looked at it since. So I'm making a few alterations as we're talking here. But Leonard Fournette, I was literally just looking at, and I was looking at my notes I have for the game. I'm keeping him in.
Okay.
I am still keeping Leonard Fournette in my Beat Benny Heist contest.
Are you going to be playing him with Dede in that game, though?
I'm still deciding on that right now. We might as well just go over it now. Right now, my receivers in the Beat Benny Heist contest are Tyreek Hill and Julian Edelman. I got a lot from this game.
You're going to go with Tyreek again in the shadow matchup against Jalen.
I want to. I really do. I love Tyreek Hill still, Ben. I think he's that skilled. I'm still debating, though, whether or not I make the switch but stay in the same matchup. So
it's a really tough decision. It's a really, really tough decision.
It is. But when it comes to Leonard Fournette, yes, I'm keeping him in the lineup.
Okay, fair enough. So are we doing this now? I was going to ask you about your thoughts on the Kansas City Chiefs going up against Jacksonville today. It sounds like you have no concerns whatsoever, especially if you feel like you're going to play Tyreek Hill.
I am debating even taking out Hill but putting in Williams in my Beat Benny Heist contest. The problem is, Ben, I have Patrick Mahomes in this game. I really want to keep him in for the Beat Benny Heist contest. So that. I feel like
I will never talk you out of playing Pat Mahomes. To me, I would feel like that would be me being a bad friend.
Right.
In that spot. So I don't think that's the way to go.
Right.
There's just the thing about running back this week too is that there's just so many really intriguing options, right?
Yep.
Like just going through it, and again, Fantasy Sports Market sorts it by fantasy points per game. Like Saquon and CMC, there's no reason to ever feel insecure about going against those guys.
Right.
Todd Gurley averaged 26.5 fantasy points per game on FSM a season ago. But there's always going to be concern about what his role was going to be. I'll say this about Todd Gurley. If you want to play him in tournaments this week, this is a fine week to do it. It's going to be a back-and-forth game against Carolina. And this is going to be the healthiest he'll be all year, right? So if you feel like Todd Gurley is still going to be an active part of this offense, and remember, he would have clearly outscored McCaffrey and Barkley in fantasy points a season ago, except he missed those last 2 games, but
Right.
he only finished 13 points behind those guys. To me, I think Todd Gurley is worth a dart throw in a tournament or two.
And especially people are going to have a ton of bias from last year as well and the knee tendonitis. So with that, Ben, you can take full advantage and go all in on him. This will be, again, week 1, a very telling week for these situations lingering from last season. Todd Gurley certainly is. They got Henderson for a reason to spell him a little bit, but that doesn't mean this guy has RB1 potential, Ben. We were talking about this guy as the number 1 pick last season, so he can absolutely be that again. New season, willing to give him a shot.
I think so, too. Before we get to our lineups, and again, there's still a few minutes or so if anybody wants to get any final questions in. We've talked about Kansas City, Jacksonville, mentioned the perspective of Washington and Philadelphia. Although we didn't really talk about Carson Wentz today, who's got a great matchup against Washington. The problem is that you worry whether or not it's going to be very run-oriented for Philadelphia today. Does that concern you for anybody that's considering playing Carson Wentz? And again, a total going from 46.5 to a pretty small total of only 44.5.
Yes, it's concerning a little bit, especially in a contest like the ones we enter on FSM. Alshon Jeffrey, good difference maker there. Wish I can start him today. So I'm still debating whether or not. When it comes to Carson Wentz, though, in these contests, staying away from him today, Ben, especially with the Miles Sanders situation lingering, the reports coming out that both of them will be in heavy usage, both Howard and Miles Sanders. Again, very telling day. That's why in the Beat Benny Heights contest, I'm going with Mahomes and that high total.
Perfect. I love it. All right. Are you ready to reveal what we've been working on all throughout the entirety of the week? Your FSM lineup. So how do we want to do it? Do we want to go position by position? We trade off. Do you want to give your lineup and then I'll react to it and then I'll give my lineup and you'll react? How do you think we should do this?
You know what? You start with your quarterback. We'll go position by position.
Okay. Listen, we talked about how much we love Jameis Winston over the course of today. Give me Jameis Winston in a really exciting matchup between Tampa Bay and San Francisco. I am thrilled about both these offenses today. I think both of them can put up a ton of points. That's one of the few games that we have actually seen the total continue to rise up. I think it started around 49 and has since gone up to, let's see if I can confirm.
51 looking at it.
I'm now seeing it at, you're right, it is 51.
51.
So it's gone up a total of 2 points. No real reason to be concerned over the weather currently in Tampa Bay. I'm going to buy into Jameis Winston this year. He might throw a pick or two, but I think 300 yards is almost a guaranteed lock. I think he's going to hook up with Chris Godwin throughout the entirety of the game. We might see some more O.J. Howard, and hopefully Mike Evans is able to play as well. So give me Jameis Winston in my quarterback spot in my cash game lineup on FSM this week. What about you?
I'm going with Patrick Mahomes, as I continue to say. I'm riding the high total there, which is also was in the 50s at least an hour ago. I know line movement changes, Benny Ice. And what I'm doing with this situation is I'm actually stacking the Chiefs with Damian Williams. So I feel like I'm handcuffing a little. So with Mahomes and Williams, both will be in my lineup. That way I've got some representation. Again, when I start Patrick Mahomes in these tournaments on FSM, more than likely there will be a good chance that you will see another Chiefs receiver or running back in there with them, so I could double down.
All right, let's move on. With you mentioned Damian Williams is one of your running backs. Where are you going in that other running back spot?
Same matchup, Benny Heiss. I am going with Leonard Fournette. I'm going a lot in. I've loved this matchup all week. Since Monday, I've been touting it. I want a piece of it, and Leonard Fournette and Damian Williams will be in those running back spots for me.
Okay. My two running backs, they are going to be incredibly chalk on FSM, but again, I just think the matchup sets up so well for both those guys. Christian McCaffrey is my number one running back this week. I think he's going to be used actively in the running game, actively in the passing game for Carolina going up against the Rams. You know they're going to need points to be able to score. Cam feels perfectly comfortable dropping off the ball. And again, full point PPR scoring, Fensty, Christian McCaffrey is always going to be in play. This is where I was having some trouble. I am for sure going 3 running backs when it comes to my fantasy sports markets lineup. So I was debating between the guy that you're starting, Leonard Fournette, and this guy who is a road dog. But I also think that he's going to get upwards of maybe 8 to 9 targets in the passing game at the running back spot. I think I have talked myself on a non-salary site in a cash game lineup. Remember, it's a cash game lineup for me. Saquon Barkley is available. He's sitting right there. I have a hard time talking myself out of playing him, especially in week 1 against Dallas.
Let's just say, do you think if Dallas gets out to a huge lead, though, do you think they'll limit Saquon or they'll continue to run him into the ground? Let's say we're in the third quarter, late third quarter, and it's been a 2-touchdown difference because you know what Dallas's offense is perfectly capable of, especially with Zeke back. Are you confident enough that they'll still utilize Saquon?
Yes, but I also don't think that Dallas is going to blow them out the way that people anticipate. These games always tend to be fairly close. It's a division game. It's a late afternoon slate game. Dallas is going to win because I don't think the Giants are very good, but they usually tend to get up for these games against Dallas. And again, we're not sure how Zeke is going to look. I'm confident. I'm still playing him in season-long leagues, but probably fading him for DFS this week. So I think the Giants will hang around a little bit, and I think part of the reason why is that Saquon Barkley is going to be active in the passing game and in the running game as well. At the wide receiver spot, we got 2 to choose from, Fensty. Cash game lineup, where are you going?
I'm actually going to stick in the same matchup here with Juju Smith-Schuster and Julian Edelman. Again, audition time for the Patriots, and we know that Tommy loves his Julian Edelman, so today I'm going to ride that against the Steelers.
Fair enough. I am also putting Juju Smith-Schuster in my lineup, so that's one guy that we have in common. Yep. And if I'm playing Jameis, you got to stack him with somebody, and I think that guy today is Chris Godwin in the slot. I just get so excited about thinking that this guy could put up Larry Fitzgeraldine-type numbers. Based on what we saw with Arians do in Arizona for so many years. Godwin is so talented. He's so athletic and freakishly talented. And I still think people are more likely to side with Evans on a site like FSM as opposed to Godwin. He'll be popular certainly on the salary sites, but on a place like FSM, I think Godwin actually might give you lower ownership than you might anticipate. At tight end, where do you go this week?
I'm going with one of the big three, Ben. I'm going with George Kittle. Again, great matchup there, high total against Tampa. Good luck covering Kittle. We were talking about all show about how there's a lot of uncertainty with how the targets will be divided among the receivers, but you know that Kittle's going to be targeted a ton in this game.
Yeah, George Kittle is my guy as well. Listen, if I'm already going to have 2 guys from Tampa and what I expect to be the back and forth game of the day, you want to run it back with somebody, and I think Kittle is as good of a target as anybody to run this back with. So I'm right there with you. In that flex spot, this is going to be a tough one. There's a lot of really intriguing candidates to choose from. Where are you going here?
I'll just give you them both right now, Ben. One of them is one of your guys, Christian McCaffrey. The same reasons you have. So if I'm not going to trust in Cam, as I haven't in some of the questions, I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey as star running back. And also someone who I think that all the reports are going to be accurate. They're going to run him into the ground today, Chris Carson.
Now we're starting to sound too similar. I have Carson currently in my flex spot for this matchup as well. I think you're right. Seattle, one of the most run-heavy teams. They're 10-point favorites at home. I really want to find that Pete Carroll stat. I'll try and retweet that out once the show is over today, just because of how crazy good they have been, and Carson is certainly healthy, and he runs tough, and Cincinnati's a team that's just not going to stop anybody on the ground. Kicker and defense, I'll just give you my 2 right from the very beginning. I think Seattle, I can sort of give myself a little bit of leverage here. I'm going to go with Jason Myers, the Seattle kicker, just because I think they're going to put up points, and at some point maybe they'd start to take it a little bit easier on Cincinnati. I like teams that have high projected totals to be able to use their kicker. Myers was one of the best in the NFL a season ago, so I'm going to stick with him. And then defense, give me the Baltimore Ravens on the road against the Miami Dolphins. Ryan Fitzpatrick might throw for over 250, 300 yards, but he is also prone to throw a couple picks as well. He will take some sacks. I do think this is a great opportunity for the Baltimore defense. Normally I like to pair my defense with a running back for the correlation play, but Mark Ingram, I like today. Justice Hill, I like for the rest of the future for the NFL and for this year. But give me Baltimore's defense in a very advantageous matchup.
We're on the same wavelength, Benny Heiss. I have Baltimore as well.
So there you go. So we still have some differentiation, but those are our lineups. And that's our show. Week 1, Fantasy Football Sunday in the books. Again, remember to use that promo code FFSunday, $5 free over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Fensty, you will be off next week. So we'll have a special surprise co-host. It might just be me. Might be me talking to myself, asking myself questions, playing the role of Fensty. Maybe I'll put myself on 2 different screens. But thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being a part of the show. Go take on Fensty in that single entry contest over at fantasysportsmarkets.com. Until next time, we'll talk to you guys soon. Be good.
Dominate.